We're still poor and sick down here. But look what is about to happen. Here we go again. In my lifetime, former colonies gained independence, and then finally they started to get healthier and healthier and healthier. And in the 1970s, then countries in Asia and Latin America started to catch up with the Western countries. They became the emerging economies. Some in Africa follows. Some Africans were stuck in civil war and others hit by HIV. And now we can see the world today in the most up-to-date statistics. Most people today live in the middle, but there are huge differences at the same time between the best of countries and the worst of countries. And there are also huge inequalities within countries. These bubbles show country averages, but I can split them. Take China, I can split it into provinces. There goes Shanghai. It has the same wealth and health as Italy today. And there is the poor inland province Guizhou. It is like Pakistan. And if I split it further, the rural parts are like Ghana in Africa.
And yet, despite the enormous disparities today, we have seen 200 years of remarkable progress. That huge historical gap between the West and the rest is now closing. We have become an entirely new converging world. And I see a clear trend into the future. With aid, trade, green technology and peace, it's fully possible that everyone can make it to the healthy, wealthy corner.
Well, what you just seen in the last few minutes is a story of 200 countries shown over 200 years and beyond. It involved plotting of 120,000 numbers. Pretty neat, huh?
Is that a different perception about a world that we've been living in for the last how many years? It gives us another context. It makes us feel a little more optimistic. It takes a faith, which is based on things we have no knowledge of, godly realities, and gives us a feeling that, wait a minute, is this a world more ready redemption than it was one generation ago? Are we sampling a bit of Geulah today? Oh, hang on, it's a lousy, crummy world. Who said Moshiach comes to a good world? If the world was good, we wouldn't need Moshiach in the first place. As the Gemara in Sota speaks about, there are signs and there are signs. There are horrible signs about society and families and the world, and there are wonderful signs. There's the music, there's the tension, and there's the balance. That's what it's like being on the threshold. Anyway, big wheels are turning. They're turning toward Geulah in unprecedented ways. And I just want to share one more, you know what? Let me take that question. Who had a question? By the way, as a rule, hold the questions till the end, but since she asked one anyway, let's take it now.
I'm pessimistic about the next 25, 50 years. Income inequality, health problems that are massive, the obesity, the diabetes, sustainability of our environment. We're looking at the possibility that there was once life on Mars. Right now, Peru does not have enough water. The glaciers are melting. It's already planned that right now we fight over oil. India gets most of its waters from the glaciers coming off of the mountains and glaciers where the Mount Everest is. UN people are already looking at what's going to happen when India has no fresh water to drink. We're talking in our lifetime because of what we're doing with fossil fuels. That's what I believe, and I'm worried about it.
Thank you. We've got another perspective. May I say it in 2 words? Gloom and doom. But the view is that when the cup is half full, it's really half empty. Pessimism is realism. That's the view I'm hearing. We're not being pessimistic. We're reading the signs. We have to take action. We're going to do what we can, but the world is going to hell in a basket. And that's what's happening. That's what I'm hearing. And here we're taking facts about real countries over real periods of time. You're saying we're running to the edge of the cliff? Maybe we're not. Let me give you another piece of the perspective. And I respect your view, and by nature, I'm a pessimist and a skeptic. But I'm learning.
I'm totally Hishtadlis.
What? You're totally?
Hishtadlis.
Hishtadlis. We're making Hishtadlis, and we should make Hishtadlis, not only about what we're doing in the world, what we're doing in our inner world. Okay, let me continue. Here's a book by the guy who invented, or pretty much invented, the concept of a mutual fund, Sir John Marks Templeton. I'm actually a beneficiary of one of his projects because my course, Faith and Science, that I taught for 7 years at the University of Toronto in the Faculty of Arts and Sciences, was actually funded and launched with Templeton money. I just started the course, but because of that organization, 100 undergraduates a year not only learned what I wanted to give them about how sciences and technology and medicine are getting in tune with traditional faith values and principles, but they also got to learn Jewish texts, which I had not put in there. Templeton Foundation said, no rabbis, no money. And I put in some Rambam, Alter Rebbe, and the Rebbe's teachings, and that actually created a real offering that was the most popular course at New College in the University of Toronto's Faculty of Arts and Sciences for years. Templeton. Now this guy was a philanthropist and he put his money into all kinds of things. He spent over $1 billion in his lifetime on philanthropy. One of the things he wanted to do was to present to the public through the academic sector what is going on in science, medicine, and technology and how it's converging to traditional faith values so that the universalist left and the religious right could find a common ground in the middle and improve society. He wrote a book called Is Progress Speeding Up? I should have actually brought a copy of it here. This book talks about all these different areas, not just health and longevity, that we spoke, longevity, health and longevity, but talks about transportation, communication, working conditions, leisure time, spirituality, political oppression, and looks at and many other areas, and looks at the last 100 years, 50 years, and recent decades, and uses United Nations statistics to prove incontrovertibly that the world is consistently getting better overall in all of these areas, despite all the horrible news. The funny thing is, a billionaire philanthropist, financial genius, writes a book, presents it to 12 major publishers who all turn it down on one point. Okay, we see the good news, Mr. Templeton, Sir John. Where's the bad news? We need something even-handed. You got to balance this with some negativity. I mean, look around you. The world is going to hell in a basket. And he didn't want to write about it. He said, no, I am going to present you with the information you don't know. The whole world is dragging everything this way. I want to push your consciousness that way. Who wouldn't want to listen to him? 12 publishers didn't. He opened his own publishing company so that he could publish that book, and then went on to publish another 20 or 30 titles. But the point is the world ready for a positive message? Turn on the radio. You don't hear good news. Is there good news? Of course there's good news. But good news doesn't sell news. Disasters sell. Anyway, this is the concept I wanted to share with you about the world unfolding in a positive way in many, many more dimensions. Now, if you would change the title and say, this book is called The Footsteps of Moshiach, it would work. You could work it like that, because these are the things that we're anticipating. Why is this happening now? Could this have been written 200 years ago? Absolutely not. 400, 600, 1,000 years ago? Could not have been written. These changes weren't happening then. They're happening now, and they have been foretold. And they've been foretold in our sources. First, a bit about our sources. The Medrash says, Istakel bi'araisu vara alma, God looked into the Torah and created the world. Before there was a creation, before Bereshis bara, before the Big Bang or let there be light, however you want to bang it, there was Torah. There was a plan. And that plan came with a purpose. The Gemara in Sanhedrin, Daf Tzadik Ches, Amud Beis, says the world was created only for Mashiach. That's the purpose of the creation of the world. When you look in the Chumash, right at the beginning, Ruach Alakim merachefes al pnei hamayim, the Spirit of God hovered over the face of the waters. Right after the beginning, God created heavens and the earth. Right after that, and the Spirit of God hovered over the face of the earth. What do the Midrashim say? Zerucho Shem Melech HaMashiach. This is the Spirit of Mashiach. Right then. Well, some Midrashim say Melech HaMashiach, some say it's Mashiach. There are 22 Midrashic sources that are brought down in Mashiach and Geulah ala Torah. If you take a look over there, it's 22 different sources that bring this concept down. This is mainstream Judaism. Mashiach is hardwired into creation. There wouldn't be a world if there wouldn't be a Mashiach. And the Zohar is where we find out when this Geulah process is going to start to accelerate and how. The changes that we've been looking at just now were foretold in the Zohar, and the Zohar pegs the period around 1840, 5600 in Jewish chronology as being the time when the lid starts to blow on the social, scientific, technological changes, as well as spiritual revelations that characterize a world emerging towards Geulah.
When was the Zohar?
I'm going to give you a timeline, and you're going to see it. Just before the destruction of the temple, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his students composed the Zohar, and then it started to become more accessible in the publishing way around the 14 or 1500s. But it was around from then. Here are some of the developments that we could see from then. 1 second, let me just take. In mathematics, in the mid-19th century, just within a few years before and after 1840, complex analysis, partial differential equations, differential geometry, non-Euclidean geometry, linear algebra, quaternions, analytical mechanics, lots of stuff going in math. It's the backbone of science. In physics, the wave theory of light, thermodynamics, electromagnetic induction. I know some of you are just not nerds and science people, but some of you are. This is my moment for them. Okay, conservation of energy, absolute temperature scale, electromagnetic equations. All of this launched then. And in chemistry, organic chemistry, valence theory, molecular structure, stereochemistry. None of this was known before then. It all was the bedrock of modern science and technology. Sure, there was science before, but the lid started to come off then. Here's another slice of the same phenomenon. In 2006, a guy by the name of Jonathan Hubner took an encyclopedia of scientific discovery or innovation that was published around then, 7,000 different discoveries and innovations over a period of about 500 or 550 years. He divided it up into decades and calculated how many chidushim, how many new things came out decade by decade from the 15th century to the current era. And he had a sense that things had peaked about 150 years ago. Things had really started, something was happening then, and that the world actually has been dumbing down, even though technology is moving ahead. True discoveries in science have actually slowed down. And here's how he puts it. If you take a look, and it's very hard to read this, the number of technological breakthroughs and patents registered have been steadily falling in numbers since the early 20th century. They really peaked in 1840. Here we go. The left chart technical breakthroughs per billion people in the world. If you take a look at that, the peak of that red line is 1840. More technical breakthroughs and patents registered, technical breakthroughs per billion of world population in the decade of 1840 than any other time before or since. That's awesome. Hubner did not know about the Zohar. He didn't plan to prove anything. I don't even know if he still knows about the Zohar. I never wrote him about it. He published in a totally secular journal, and I read the paper, and he doesn't mention anything spiritual at all. He had a completely different theory, but he did support something else. If you take a look at American patents per million population from 1795 through to 2000, you see that there's a sudden, like there's a delta curve. It's just like all of a sudden shoots up. 1840, that's when it takes off. Things were happening. So let's take a look. Was the Zohar written in 1840 about itself? No, that's really not what happened. The Zohar is really, really old. So let's take a look here. We're going to go back to the Gemara here. Hang on a second. What page am I on? Yeah. In the Gemara in Sanhedrin, page 97, on the first side, it says the world will exist for 6,000 years. And then the seventh millennium will be time out of time. That'll be the Shabbat Bereshit, the Shabbos of creation. It'll be a heaven on earth period. According to some, it's a spiritual. According to the Rambam, thought it was spiritual. The Ramban thought it would be souls and bodies. The ultimate reborn would be in the physical world. But the point is, it's that heaven on earth time, a blissful era. If we go back, and let's take a look at the now. So soon is Moshiach time. Going back is where we are now. That flood of knowledge of 1840 that was predicted, you can see just a little blip just before the now time. If you go back about 1900 years, that's when the Zohar was written. And in the year 2448, that's when the Torah was written, and the Zohar was commenting on that, on what's written in the Torah, when it said that prediction. And what the Zohar was commenting on in the Torah was something that happened long before that. I don't know, 1656 from creation. 792 years back from Matan Torah was the Noahide flood. Thank you very much, Rabbi. Very good, very good. So what's going on here? Let's take a look at the verse. In Genesis. It says in the 600th year. Actually, it says years. It's referring to a century, but emphasized on the end of that period of Noah's life. The fountains of the deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened. The Zohar comments on that and says, in the 600 years of the sixth millennium, the gates of wisdom on high and the fountains of wisdom below will be opened, and the world will be brought to tikkun, restoration, to be ushered into the seventh millennium. The Ashmora Saboker, which is about from that period of time, says that the Zohar was commenting there about the scientific revolution. The Rebbe brings that down in a Sikha, and he adds that Chassidus, the publishing of Torah Or and Likutei Torah, were around then. The windows of heaven opening up, where it was, Chassidus was raining down on us heavenly knowledge, godly knowledge about God, the soul, and the purpose of life, and so on. That's really the context. And when it talks about the epochs of our history, so 2,000 years of chaos, 2,000 years of Torah, 2,000 years, the days of Mashiach, you see it's a process. It's not like somebody, with a big white beard and a red jacket popping down the chimney and poof, here we are. It is an evolution. There is a sudden revelation that can be associated with this, but it's a process nonetheless. Science was not always friendly to religious concepts, and not every scientist today is. Science itself is evolving, and it's evolving in harmony with our faith. Science was pretty atheistic. Let me tell you something about atheism, okay? There was that view, and if you would, it's all dumb luck. It's just random. If you put enough monkeys thousands of monkeys at typewriters, they're going to come up with Shakespeare eventually. And if you get all those molecules and atoms just bouncing around the world, they will react eventually, and they will create life, and then the life will create human life. It's just evolution. Don't get excited. There's enough going on. So you happen to get lucky once in a while. That was the view of the science of the 19th century. When all these discoveries were made, they didn't realize that they were part of Geulah unfolding. They thought they were part of the age of reason, the age of enlightenment. We know when they quite wisely deposed the church in order to get some political freedom in society, they threw out the baby with the bathwater. They threw out God. They threw out the soul. Laplace said, show me all the particles and the forces acting on them, and I'll tell you everything that'll happen until the end of time. That was the belief, a materialistic world where human life was meaningless and purposeless. But science itself is not like that anymore. Science is asking deeper questions about the orderliness of nature. Are these random things? Yes, you could have an atheistic and random view and say, yeah, listen, eventually you have to come up with a perfect spiral that's absolutely perfect mathematically and so on. But some were saying intelligent design needs an intelligent designer, and the more they found out about the way the world works, the more mathematical, beautiful, and sublime they realized it was. And really, a lot of those scientists were looking at studying nature as a religious experience, studying mathematics as a religious experience. There's an astrophysicist by the name of Paul Davies. He wrote a book called The Mind of God. He has a whole bunch of books. But he talks about this idea of math within nature. And here you see these beautiful shapes are perfectly describable by mathematical equations. And they're embedded in everything that's going on in nature. And he asked the question, where was the math before the stuff came about? Did that math exist? In other words, before the creation or the universe has these mathematical rules. But before there was a universe to manifest them, did that math exist somewhere? And if so, where? So he got the idea of the mind of God is an orderly thing, and intelligent design requires an intelligent designer. The biggest atheist in the world was Antony Flew. Antony Flew is he still alive? I don't know. Still alive? Yeah, he was brought to believe in God by studying genetics. He realized it could not be random. It was impossible. Someone is trying to communicate something to us. Kind of like this. Imagine you would be looking up in the sky and you see geese flying, and that's how they were flying over there. Would you say that was a random formation and that's just how they migrate? No, you wouldn't. You'd say there's something going on over there. But some people are really diehards. I want to tell you a couple of stories about people who are very dedicated to their confirmation bias. The world is random because it's random, and don't confuse me with facts. Lee Spetner and Avraham Sofer wrote some amazing articles in very, very pristine academic journals, Science, Nature, IEEE, in the early to mid 60s, proving beyond a shadow of doubt statistically that the evolution from one species to another could not have happened statistically, that it was statistically impossible. There's just not enough time of the 4 billion years they thought the world was old in order to generate all those steps. Louder.
There's not enough matter.
No, that wasn't his claim. If you read the articles, it was different. So it's very interesting. Those articles should have been magnets for criticism. As soon as anybody publishes in a scientific journal something different than what the run-of-the-mill is, everybody jumps on it, everybody criticizes it, everybody beats up on these guys, and they hammer on them and so on, and it's like ruthless until junk science gets thrown out and good science wins. There's evolution within the journals. Spettner and Asofer attacked evolution right at its soft underbelly. And they did a masterful statistical claim and study using run-of-the-mill stats, the best assumptions that an evolutionist could possibly want to support their case, and showed it don't work. You know what the result was? I went through every year of Science Citation Index. I wanted to find out who ever referenced these people. Nobody. Nobody wanted to take them on. I look at it as something like, imagine you going to a vegetarian convention and somebody sets up a deli stand, you know, with pastrami sandwiches. And everybody walks by and gives a smell, but nobody's going to take a bite. That's really what was going on there. In his book about Darwin, Spettner calculates the probability of evolution of one species to another through Darwinian mechanism as being 1 in 10 to the power of 2,748. That is, you know, like 1 over 10, it's a tenth, it's small, right? 1 over 100, that's like much smaller. Imagine instead of 1 0 or 2 zeros, it's 1 over 10, but it's got 2,748 zeros. You wouldn't be able to fit them on a page, how tiny that is, the probability of evolution. To get it to be real for you, imagine all 7 billion people on this planet entered a lottery. And, excuse me, young lady, what's your name?
Esther.
Esther. And all 7 billion people enter the lottery, and Esther wins the lottery. Like, wow, amazing, it's a miracle. Well, it wasn't a miracle, somebody had to win. Now they say, okay, good, we'll do it again. And they all enter again, and Esther wins again. All 7 billion people, it's got to be Esther. Okay, people are going to say, no, this is ridiculous. This is rigged. You know, the New York State Lottery has paid out twice to the same person. But only after a big investigation. Imagine if every day for a year, Esther won the 1 in 7 billion lottery. Nobody would play after the 3rd day, and she's winning a whole year. That's the size of the probability. That's how small the probability is for one species to evolve. And yet, scientists buy Darwinian evolution because they don't have enough. There's a whole lecture that one could give about this. I'm going to skip over some really juicy stuff, but I want to tell you a story. It happened in my faith and science class, and there were 100 students there, and I was giving the Darwin debunk. I called it alternative concepts of species origin because I wanted to be PC, you know, politically correct. I didn't want to call it debunking Darwin because like they would think that I have an axe to grind. So all I did was talk about the science. At the end of the class, I asked, are there any questions? I mean, feeling that you'd have to basically be a moron in order to support Darwin after listening to what I had to say, just because I collected all the sources that already exist in science to show that there's another side of the story. I wasn't proud, but I was happy to have the merit to restore a little bit of faith to the undergraduate student body. There's about 85 non-Jews, about 15 Jews in the class. And one of the fellows looks very, very Jewish. He pipes up and he says, did you hear what this guy says? Look at him, he's with a skull cap, he's with a beard, he's got an agenda, this is a university. Are you guys gonna let him get away with this? What is he doing over here? This is not a synagogue, this is a university. If what he's saying is true, then every other professor should be talking like that. Why only he's talking like that? And look at him, he's obviously religious, so obviously he does have an agenda, and you're letting him get away with it? I didn't have a chance to breathe. But 4 students ganged up on him. They looked like a little United Nations around him. You know, like different colors and this and that. What's the matter? Why so much polemic? Why are you so agitated? The sources don't exist. The mathematics are incorrect. Well, what's your problem? And so what? You know, can you have a cogent argument? Why? And he's like looking from one person to another, and he doesn't know what to do. He thought he was going to get a rebellion, and instead he got quashed himself. So I came over to him and I said, look, I'm very interested in what you have to say. I have an office hour. Please come an hour before class next week. We'll meet. He said, okay, I'll be happy to. You can explain to me your views. Great. So he comes. I asked him his name. You know, in university, you don't know the names of all the kids in your class. That's the way it works with a big class. And yeah, sure enough, he was like one of the Jewish kids in the class. I could tell by his name. I said, are you from town here, from Toronto? He says, yeah. I said, where did you go to school? He said, Community Hebrew Academy. I said, oh, great. Would you like to put on tefillin? I happen to have a pair of tefillin right here. So I take out the tefillin, I start to go, you Lubavitchers. All right, fine, let's get it over and done with. So I start to put the tefillin on him. I tell him, Baruch atah. He says, I can handle this. Baruch atah Hashem Elkeinu melech haolam asher kishanu mizbeis v'tefillin laniach tefillin. Okay, fine. So I get a siddur, I open it up to the Shema. It's okay. Shema Yisrael Hashem. I said, you want a siddur? You could say more. He says, I'm not going to daven a whole shachris now. I said, okay. So I start asking him, where do you live? Do you live at home? He says, no, I live on campus. I live just off campus. I said, oh, you're sharing an apartment? He says, yeah. I said, with like a bunch of people? He says, no, just one. Is it a boy or a girl? He says, it's a girl. I said, is she Jewish? He says, no. Now I understand Darwin. He wasn't fighting for evolution. He was fighting like Aldous Huxley said. Aldous Huxley said, we did not embrace Darwin because we wanted to, because he made a rationally compelling case for speciation through natural selection. We embraced Darwin because we desired our sexual liberty. It was a way of, no, listen, because if Darwin is right, then the relationship is right. But if Darwin is wrong, then maybe the Torah is right.